It's time for Survivor Angels, an approach to strengthen trauma survivors. Here, you can escape what draws negativity and engage your positive abilities and the gifts that you've always had. Let's activate your angels. And to help you on that journey, here's Chaplain Jody.
Let's talk about the lie that no one means to tell you. The lie is this: that healing means going back to who you were before, before the breakdown, before the loss, before the moment everything split open. That if you just do enough work, enough therapy, enough processing, enough forgiveness, enough spiritual practice, you'll return to normal. But here's the truth most people don't want to say out loud: there is no going back. It's like the old saying, actually, I think it's scripture based, if I remember correctly: you can't go home. Took me a long time to understand that. And so the grief that comes from trying is often heavier than the trauma itself. It's called the quiet exhaustion of getting better. Many people don't realize that they're stuck. Not because they haven't healed, but because they're healing toward the wrong destination. They're aiming backward, in reverse. They're trying to recover a version of themselves that existed before they crossed anything. And crossing changes you, not morally, you're not spiritually superior, just structurally. You see, survival doesn't just wound you, it reorganizes you. And when healing is framed as restoration instead of reorientation, people end up exhausted, frustrated, and quietly ashamed. Sound kind of familiar? It's because we think, why am I not back to myself yet? Why does life still feel different? What's wrong with me? Nothing. Absolutely nothing is wrong with you. You see, the map that you're using just doesn't work anymore. And so that's why the back to, in air quotes, normal is a dangerous goal. Let's ground this in some reality, shall we? Neurology tells us that after trauma, the brain rewires itself around safety. Identity research shows that major life disruption permanently alters self-concept. And then anthropology shows that initiatory experiences, near death, loss, exile or isolation, illness, were never meant to return someone to their previous social role unchanged. Yet, modern culture insists: bounce back, get over it, be who you were. Well, that expectation alone becomes another injury. Because even when symptoms improve, even when you're functioning, capable, grounded, you may still feel like a stranger in your old life. That's not failure. That's evolution under pressure. It all goes to the grief that no one names. There's a grief that doesn't get enough air. Not the grief for what happened, but the grief for who you were before you knew certain things, before you saw how fragile safety can be, before you felt time collapse, and before the veil thinned and stayed noticeable. This grief is subtle. It doesn't always cry. Sometimes it just shows up as irritability. The crabby comes out, or boredom, or the sense that old conversations just no longer fit. People often mistake this for depression. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's dislocation. And let me say at this point, I am not a mental health counselor or professional. You need to go to those people if any of this is resonating with you. The veil doesn't close the same way. Here's where we need to be honest and a little edgy. Once perception changes, it doesn't fully revert. You can ground it, integrate it. You can learn when to open and when to rest, but you can't unknow what you know. The veil may thicken again, but it rarely returns to its original density. And that's not a problem to solve. It's a reality to orient within. And this is why survivors often feel, I don't fit into the same conversations. I can't pretend the same way. I see through things I used to accept. And that's not arrogance, it's awareness. And when, or maybe I should say, and awareness without orientation feels isolating. Angels don't take you back to that old self. No, they walk you forward. Here's something very important to understand about angelic support. Angels do not return you to who you were. They accompany you into who you are becoming. Across traditions, all across traditions, angels appear after something has shifted, not before. They show up on roads, not at home, in deserts, not palaces, at thresholds, not destinations. They don't say, go back, go back. No, they say you're not alone as you move forward. This is why angelic encounters, however subtle, often increase after survival, not before. They're not there to undo. They are there to stabilize transition. So why do people get stuck spiritually here? This is where things can go sideways if no one names it, and that includes you. Some people realize they can't go back. And instead of orienting forward, they try to escape upward. They spiritualize the loss. They change signs. They try to live permanently in expanded states. But here's the grounded truth. Expanded awareness without embodiment leads to fragmentation. Angels don't ask you to leave your life. They ask you to inhabit it differently. And this is why discernment matters. This is why grounding matters. This is why Survivor Angels doesn't glorify awakening. Awakening without integration is not liberation. I struggled with that for a while. It's disorientation with better language. So let's talk forward motion. Let's talk sacred geometry. Let's talk again about pattern, because this matters here. If healing were a circle, you could return to the starting point. Could you? Because healing isn't circular. It's spiral. A spiral revisits familiar terrain. but from a new elevation. Think about how a spiral looks. You may encounter the same themes: trust, safety, belonging, meaning, but you're not encountering them as the same person. Sacred geometry reminds us that forward motion doesn't require abandoning the past, it requires re-seeing it. And this is why going back doesn't feel impossible. Yeah, it does. Sometimes going back feels impossible. Don't fool yourself. You're not meant to. So then you've got the time after survival that doesn't cooperate, right? Another reason going forward rather than back is because back fails. Time won't cooperate. After survival, time becomes layered. You may feel, I love this one, older than your age or younger than you expect. Love that one. You may feel out of sync with your peers, ahead of some people, behind others. This isn't immaturity or regression. It's what happens when time stops being abstract and becomes personal. You've touched something that changed your relationship to mortality, meaning, and urgency. Of course, you don't experience life the same way. Why would you? Let's call it the identity gap. There's often a gap between who the world expects you to be and who you now are. Those old roles may feel tight. Old ambitions may feel hollow. And old labels may feel inaccurate. I hate labels anyway. And this is where many people panic. They try to force themselves back into those old shapes. It's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole, but those shapes were formed before the crossing. That's why they no longer fit. And forcing yourself into them only creates pressure fractures. I know you can visualize that. So, what healing actually asks of you is it doesn't ask you to return, it asks you to reorient. It asks you to grieve without collapsing, to remember without living there, and to move forward without pretending nothing changed. This is not reinvention, it's continuation with awareness. And oh, yes, it takes courage because the world is more comfortable with back to normal stories. We don't like change. And so we're more comfortable with those back to normal stories than with honest transformation. It's a grounded reframe. And here's the reframe that I want you to sit with. You are not behind because you haven't gone back. You are ahead of the illusion that going back is possible. And that doesn't mean you know where you're going yet. You don't have to. It just means you've stopped lying to yourself about where you can't return. That's not failure. That is clarity. I know you're wondering what comes next. Mm-hmm. I would if I were you. Not sure yet. I haven't written that one yet. In the next episode, we're going to talk about something that lives right here in this gap: mental health, spiritual awakening, or both. How do you tell the difference? How to hold both without dismissing either? And how to stay grounded when language starts to blur. I guess I do kind of already have this written a little bit in my head. Because once you stop trying to go back, the real questions begin. If you've been quietly judging yourself for not being who you used to be, let this be permission to stop. You crossed something, and crossings don't end with return. They end with orientation. Thank you for being here. Until next time, human first, awake second, and always accompanied. Activate your angels.
Thanks again for joining Chaplain Jody on Survivor Angels. For more information, go to chaplainjody.me. That's chaplainjody.me. This is Dave Schrader. Until next time, sending you off to activate your angels.